Meantime, his teammate Scott Jeffrey, on trying to catch Darrell Alderman for the Winston points lead, had a significant fall off in performance. He dropped to a 7-14 as he defeated Troy Coughlin to advance to round number 2. Should both Scott and Darrell win in round number 2, the way the ladder is drawn as a result of qualifying, they would meet in the semifinal round, and that is a crucial round for Scott Jeffrey's hopes to win his first ever Winston Championship. For the story in Top Fuel and our other Scott, here's my good pal Steve Evans.
David Scott Kalitta has had the most successful season any Top Fuel driver in history has enjoyed. Of 16 races, he's been in 9 finals and won 5 of those. But the last 2 weeks have been very hard on this young man from Michigan trying to win his first Winston Championship. Friday night qualifying a week ago, he had 2 attempts, overpowered the racetrack, smoked the tires, and was not in the program. Pressure yesterday, but Scott was up to the challenge, and he qualified with only a 488, the number 12 spot. This morning, up against Joe Amato round 1, Scott improved just a bit to a 485, picking up 200 more Winston points, puts him a little further ahead of number 2, Don Prudhomme. But if you can translate desire into performance, don't yet count out the snake. This is his final strike tour, and he wants to go out a winner. But he, too, has struggled just like Scott. He wasn't qualified until the last session yesterday. He had 1 final shot, and he did it with a 4.82 second elapsed time. However, an exhaust valve went through a piston, torched the head. The crew had to work all night to get it back together. Round number 1 against Eddie Hill. Do or die. If he loses the championship. Well, he whips Hill with a stunning 4.77 low elapsed time of the round. A fuel pump failed, and again, a lot of engine damage. Now, here's the scenario. Get this. In round number 2, if Scott Kalitta beats Blaine Johnson, he's the Winston champ. If he doesn't beat Blaine Johnson, well, then Don Prudhomme has to lose. Guess you could hand that to Scott Kalitta. His father, Connie, races the snake, could give him a nice big present.
So there's the potential victim for that man. That is Scott Jeffrey, and he is hoping to keep his quest for the Winston Championship alive by winning here in round number 2 of Pro Stock Eliminator. His potential victim is Larry Morgan at the wheel of his Oldsmobile Cutlass. Coming into this race in Dallas, Darrell Alderman held a 980-point lead over Scott Jeffrey. Warren Johnson third, followed by Jim Yates and Warren's son Kurt, number 5 in the championship chase, with only 2 races remaining this season. The Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile, Larry Morgan at the wheel, not in the top 5, but could be a spoiler here. He qualified 7th at a 7:12, then beat Mark Osborne with a 7:16 in round 1. Meantime, Scott Jeffrey on the number 2 qualifier at a 7:08 had that 7:14 we saw earlier when he beat Troy Coughlin in the initial stanza. The Mopar car. This is one of the new Dodge Avengers, a 500 cubic inch wedge head motor. This is not the fabled Hemi that the Chrysler Corporation has been so famous for over the years. It is a wedge motor pulling the Avenger down the track, and you're on board with Scott Jeffrey on. But could not muster the number to win. Look at this, another 7-0 by Scott Jeffrey on, this time an 09 at over 194 miles an hour. Morgan had a great reaction time, but his elapsed time was only a 7:15, not close to Scott, who now advances into the 3rd semifinal round. Here is Kurt Johnson, the driver of the Texas Harley Oldsmobile Cutlass. Young Kurt is getting a tremendous break here in round number 2. He will automatically advance into the semifinals because he has no opponent. He qualified number 5 at a 7:09, then ran 7:10 to beat Bob Glidden in round number 1. You ask, why is he on a single? Well, we have the answer. Take a look at what happened in round number 1. If everything had gone proper, one of these 2 drivers, either Steve Schmidt or Billy Ewing, would have faced Kurt Johnson. But as starter buster counts watched placidly, they both took their time about staging. Finally, they both broke and came into the staging beams. Billy Ewing left, Steve Schmidt left, but starter buster counts did not throw the switch. The rules say you must activate the tree to have a race.
I can't remember the last time both cars were disqualified. What was the deal up there?
I have no idea. I went in, turned my bulb on. The next thing I knew, the other car left. He was 3 car lengths out on me. I left. I wasn't paying attention to the tree at that point in time. All I know is I got an ET slip that says I won.
But the rules say different. That tree must be activated to have a valid race, and both drivers left before starter Buster Couch threw the switch. Here's Kurt Johnson on his single that advances him to the semis. 7:11 his elapsed time. Pretty good speed, 195 miles an hour plus. Back at the starting line, burnouts underway for our next pair. It will be Glidden against Johnson, one of the classic battles. The difference here, the generation gap. Right now, let's go back to the far end of the racetrack. Here's Steve.
Did I win?
Yes, you won.
God, it's been a long time since I've been down here. I knocked the dust off this cap.
A 7-11. The Oldsmobiles are running with the Dodges today.
That's good. You know, they've been beating up on us all year, and we're finally coming back with a little bit of power. You know, I was spoiled last year, my first year of driving, and I did so good. You're learning what it takes to win these races nowadays.
Here's a man that knows what it takes to win, 2 times a Winston champion. Warren Johnson at the wheel of the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile. We talked about the generation gap. The Glidden car in the opposite lane is driven by the younger generation. This is Rusty Glidden. He out-qualified his dad in the number 8 spot at a 7:13 and ran 7:11 when he beat Jim Yates on a hole shot in the first round. Meantime, WJ had the number 1 spot, 7:03, and ran 7:09 to defeat number 16 qualifier Bob Harris in their first round matchup. And a red light start by Rusty brings it into his dream. Warren Johnson marches on and runs 7:05 in the process, a speed of almost 197 miles an hour. Great speed for Warren Johnson. Take a look again. Rusty Glidden missed by only 0.03 of a second, but he still did not have enough elapsed time, even if he had been perfect at the tree.
While the Dodgers beat each other running for the championship, you're beating them up with performance, 7:05.
We had to change motors after the first run. We heard something in that other motor that ran the 03 with. This one came through, so at least we're in the hunt.
So's Kurt, really.
Yeah, he got a single on that thing, so he's doing good too.
The Oldsmobiles are definitely a huge factor to win this race.
This is the points leader in the Winston Chase. Alderman qualified number 3 at a 7:08, but he improved to a great 7:03. We saw it earlier when he beat Ray Frank. Mark Powick, the number 11 qualifier, had a 7:15 in qualifying, ran 7:18 when he beat Mike Thomas in his first round race, driving his Summit Racing Oldsmobile. Again, the Dodge versus Oldsmobile battle that has been prevalent all season long, with the Mopars obviously the class cars of the field this season. Number 1 and number 2 in the championship chase, occupied by the Dodge Avengers. 500 cubic inches, 2,350 pounds with the driver on board. They're limited to 2 4-barrel carburetors and racing gasoline. A tremendous start for Alderman, and a 7:05 elapsed time gives him the win and advances him to the semifinals, 196.5 miles an hour. He was cutting it very close at the Christmas tree, and if he had red lighted, it would have been disastrous to his hopes. Warren Johnson has the lane choice over his son Kurt in the final 4, while Darrell Alderman's 7:05 gives him lane choice over his teammate Scott Jeffreyon. Steve?
If you wanted lane choice over your teammate Scott next round, you just got it with the 7:05, thundering.
Yeah, it's really leaving hard, twisting the chassis on it when it's leaving, and I figured it was a good 4 or 5 run.
Twisting the chassis is good.
Yeah, twisting the chassis is good when you're ETing.
He can go 2 rounds further than Scott. We all know what happens.
A twist in the chassis of a Pro Stock car means it's getting lots of bite. And talk about traction needs, these guys are at the top of the list. 5,000 horsepower being applied to 2 17-inch wide Goodyear tires. And I must say, without those big wings, these cars could not run at 300 plus miles an hour in the 470 range. In top fuel, Scott Kalitta has got the lead over Don Prudhomme in round number 2. If Scott wins this round, he wins the championship. Here is Corey McLenathan, the McDonald's dragster, qualified in the number 1 spot. It's been an incredible string for young Corey Mack this season as he came on board as the driver of the McDonald's car owned by Larry Minor. Qualifying number 8 was Bob Vandergrift Jr. He ran 480 in qualifying, then improved to a 479 when he beat Shelly Anderson in round number 1. His new crew chief, Dan Olson, it's taken him about 4, maybe 5 races to get everything together. But the Fruit of the Loom Activewear car with Bob Vandergrift Jr. at the wheel is definitely competitive. Here are 2 of the rising stars in Top Fuel today. 6 times this season, Corey Mack has been the number 1 qualifier. He did it here with a 475. Oh, look at the raw fuel pouring out of Vandergrift's car, indicating he did not fire some cylinders. Corey Mack hit on all 8, a 479, 304 mile-an-hour charge. That's Dave Settles bending over the engine in the Mopar Express Loop car driven by Tommy Johnson Jr. His opponent, the Sequence Computer Wiltel Communications car driven by Michael Brotherton. The burnouts designed to heat up those tires to operating temperatures.
It's often said it's hard to win from the pole in Top Fuel. Corey Mack is proving them wrong. You've won 2 races this year from the number 1 spot, and you're getting ever closer here at 479, 304.
Oh, fantastic. We knew we had to put it together for Vandergrift, boy. The kid's doing a great job, and Dan Olson's really got that car pumping. They put down some excellent qualifying passes and ran 79 to begin with. But I got to tell you, Lee Bearden, the guy's doing a fantastic job with the McDonald's Top Fuel director.
A lot of confidence there, huh?
Corey Mack calling Bob Vandergrift Jr. the kid. It's almost identical in ages, certainly within the same generation. Michael Brotherton qualified number 3 with a great 476 and then ran 486 when he beat Pat Austin. Tommy Johnson Jr., number 6 qualifier at a 477, had a 481 when he beat Mike Dunn in the initial stanza. Crew Chief Dave Settles making a pressure check atop the supercharger. There's lots of checks now being made in various positions on the engine, trying to gain some consistency in these power plants. They are extremely complicated in their fuel delivery systems. So every crew chief wants to know as much as he can about how these engines respond to the hit of the throttle. Up in smoke goes Michael Brotherton. Oh, talk about consistent performance. 481 at over 303 miles an hour. We've got a treat for you. Let's go on board in our replay. That's right, with Tommy Johnson Jr. as he makes the adjustment, pulls his visor down, moves the fuel lever, grabs the brake handle, stages, and leaves. The force of the acceleration, holding his head back against the roll bar. He hits the parachute, grabs the brake, hits the fuel shutoffs. That'll bring the engine to a stop as Tommy Johnson Jr. steers his way off the race course after a great run. Steve?
Well, TJ, that is one of your best blasts in a while, 481, 303.
Well, it is, Steve. You know, we've been lacking on consistency all year, so we tried to work on that this weekend and be a little smoother. 281s, 302, 303. Couldn't ask for any better out of the boys.
Just leave on time. This one could be yours.
Look at that finger. Number 1. If Scott Kalitta can win this round of racing, he will clinch the Winston title. The American International Airways team has been absolutely dominant throughout this entire season. Scott qualified number 12 off pace with a 488, but ran 485 when he beat Joe Amato. Blaine Johnson, his opponent here, qualified 13th at a 488, then improved to a 482 when he beat Kenny Bernstein. Alan Johnson, the brother and crew chief for Blaine Johnson, with a clenched fist saying, "Go get him, guy." Staging carefully, the engine's just idling away. They leave from idle, but instantly jump up to over 7,500 RPM. And Blaine Johnson goes up in smoke, and Scott Kalitta is the Winston champion. The crew almost subdued on the starting line, but it'll soak in a moment after an entire season of racing. A 493 at 284, just enough to win Scott Kalitta his Winston title. Our instant replay shows us Kalitta was definitely vulnerable. Blaine Johnson had nearly 7/100ths of a second advantage at the starting line, but the engine gave up. He lost some oil out of it and lost traction as well. Scott Kalitta had problems not only at the starting line but down truck. You see the raw fuel? That means he dropped a cylinder, lost over 600 horsepower from one cylinder losing fire. But it didn't stop Scott from winning the big one.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you the 1994 Winston Top Fuel champion, Scott Kalitta.
Man, I don't know what to say, you know. I mean, my guys are awesome. Dick's awesome. My dad's awesome. Finally over.
Awesome is the word to describe the season for this guy.
Oh, I mean, I can't say enough about these guys, you know. Dick, Dad, if he wasn't funding it, you know, my family for putting up with it. I wish they were here. Corey's sick. My little boy's sick, but I wish they were here.
A bit of emotion out of Scott Kalitta. You have to wonder what's going through this man's mind. Don Prudhomme, who had been trying to stop Scott Kalitta's charge to the championship, now will have to settle for second place. His opponent here in round number 2 at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals is the bankroll behind Scott Kalitta. That's his dad, Connie. Connie owns American International Airways, one of the world's largest air charter businesses. And after an incredible career in the sport of championship drag racing that saw him win his first race back in 1967, Connie Kalitta this year gathered in the most coveted single event title in drag racing, that of the U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis over Labor Day weekend. He had only been trying to win that event since he first entered the Nationals back in 1959 at Detroit, Michigan. His opponent here in round number 2, Don Prudhomme, calling a halt to his career in drag racing. After nearly 30 years in the sport, he won his first race back at Pomona in 1965. Connie qualified number 2 with a great 475, but slowed to a 507 to beat Jim Head in the first round. Don Prudhomme, meantime, qualified 10th at a 482, and as we saw earlier, blasted out that great 477 low ET of round number 1 when he beat Eddie Hill. Prudhomme may be retiring, but he is certainly having one of the more incredible seasons of his career, particularly since he made the switch from funny car to Top Fuel. Don't forget, he won 4 consecutive Winston Crowns, the first ever to do that in funny car competition. But thus far this year, he has won 2 races, Houston and Brainerd, and picked up the Winston Select Invitational title down in Rockingham. Tremendous race as Don Prudhomme gathers it in after a 480, 290-mile-an-hour run. It was not picture perfect for either car, but Prudhomme had fewer problems than did Connie. Corey Mack picks his lane over Scott Kalitta in the semifinals, while Don Prudhomme's 480 by just a little bit gives him lane choice over Tommy Johnson's 481.
It's kind of like you won the battle and lost the war, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, let me tell you that the championship went to a great young man, and he's got a tremendous future, and couldn't be happy for the Kalitta group, unless we don't want it. But we're giving it our all. You know, we're still in second place, and just got to thank Skoll and Purelator and Wins and GM Truck, Pontiac, all the people that stuck with us. I think we're having a great year, and the championship went to a great fella.
Even though John Force and his mighty crew clinched the Winston Championship several races ago, you just can't get rid of them. They're still part of just about every story. They roared in here and qualified number 1, 4.98 seconds, the only for the event so far. That was nothing, though. Look what's coming up. They cruised through round number 1. In round 2 against Al Hoffman, the Western Auto car, Hoffman lives to rip John Force's throat out. But off the starting line, it's John who does the ripping. A nice leap, but suddenly mid-track Force's car just quits. Hoffman's going to win it at 5:12. No, he's not. He crossed the center line and got disqualified. Force loved every minute of it.
Plenty exciting. I mean, like, that's kind of what it's all about. She left. She had dead holes. She wasn't moving. Put her wood. I almost thought about got to step off, but I didn't see old Hoffman. And next thing I know, she just shut off, and he went by me just throwing orange everywhere. It was bitching.
And he crossed the center line.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll teach you.
And you win.
It's all destiny, and we'll take it. Right, Castro?
And there's no blower belt on the motor either. That's why it shut off. But Al Hoffman's fun meter wasn't exactly pegged. Al, you get Force on the mat, and you can't pin him.
I don't know. If it wasn't for bad luck, I guess we wouldn't be having any here. John has incredible luck when it comes to stuff like that, but it had the front end off the ground and the lights. I couldn't steer it back. It was trying to come over and it set it down and kept touching it, but it just wouldn't come back. And what are you going to do? I mean,
not much you can. Well, that was bizarre. This is classic. Also in the second round, Cruz Pedregon up against Dale Poley. Poley in the Paisano car had 1 and a hole shot in the first round. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Pedregon wins at 5:15 to Poley's quicker 5:13. Cruiser, you get extra fries for that. Nice hole shot.
Yeah, that Paisano car there, those guys are good friends of ours, and Dale Poley's a great racer, but we knew they'd be tough, so we had to give it all we had. We had a little trouble with the brakes, been having trouble holding the car back. It's just some rotors are giving us some problems, but we held on for the win.
Okay, so the semifinals will look like this. John Force against Cruz Pedregon. You can bet Force has a new blower belt. Pedregon will have the lane choice. And Gary Bolger with lane choice, a fine 5:29 up against Dean Scusa. Mac?
We'll get to our funny car action in just a moment. Right now it is time for the semifinal round of racing for our factory hot rods. Here come the Olds boys. The Johnson family, Johnson and Johnson, Warren and Kurt. This father and son team finished 1 and 2 in the Winston Chase a year ago. Since that time, though, they have both fallen on hard times. In the middle of this season, they had difficulties getting their cars competitive with the rest of the field. But here at this event, Warren Johnson particularly has been the class of the field, both in qualifying and in elapsed time throughout eliminations. Kurt Johnson with the Texas Harley car is going to have to rely on some starting line prowess because Warren's car, the GM Performance Parts Cutlass, has been running much better. I'm talking particularly about elapsed times, but between the Johnson and Johnson group, reaction times is almost as important as a good ET. There is a lot of pride between these two as to who gets the advantage off the starting line. And as we have seen already this race, it can play a big difference when the two cars hit the finish line. Everybody wants to cut a good light without red lighting. Looking in on Warren Johnson, the RPMs come up. The tree's green and they leave. By a car length, Warren Johnson wins it a 7:06 elapsed time compared to a 7:11 for Kurt, who won the reaction wars, Daddy, by about 100th of a second. Here's the Dodge twins, the two Mopar Avengers, painted almost identical. Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffreyon. Steve?
Warren, a 7:06 puts you in the final. If you race Alderman, you can postpone their celebration.
Well, it'd be a long shot, but at least we're in the final. That's the first thing. Unfortunately, I have to race Kurt. I'd rather be racing Kurt in the final.
Good job, though.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right.
The fans definitely want to see the battle between the Dodges and the Oldsmobiles, and that's what will take place. For Scott Jeffreyon, he also can postpone the hopes of Darrell Alderman and the Winston title. In fact, if Jeffreyon could win this round and move on to the finals and dream away, take the win there, he would really close the gap on Darrell Alderman for the Winston title. Mike Sullivan, one of the co-crew chiefs for the Wayne County Speed Shop team. Marking the spot for Scott Jeffreyon, Dave Hutchins does the same for Darrell Alderman. After an entire season of racing, it's hard to believe in the next to the last event, they are still undecided for the Winston Championship between these two drivers. Out of that same Wayne County Speed Shop team have come the two leaders, Jeffreyon in the near lane, Alderman with the lane choice and the quicker car in the far lane. They're staged. And something goes wrong with Darrell Alderman's car. You can hear it backfire as Scott Jeffreyon streaks on to the win and the final round appearance. A 7.095 elapsed time for Jeffreyon. Let's take a look at this again and watch the car in the far lane. He is up against the rev limiter. Alderman's got his foot all the way to the floor. It backfires. You see the flame coming out of the hood scoop. He had serious internal engine damage. We'll try to find out what it was. They pushed the car back. The Mopar Avenger failing Alderman on the starting line. And does that tighten it up? I would say so. Warren Johnson will have the lane choice by some 0.03 of a second over Scott Jeffreyon in the finals of Pro Stock Eliminator coming up in a moment.
You weren't sure if maybe you didn't red light up there, huh?
Well, he's been sawing the tree down all day, and I've just been trying to do a good job. Mike Sullivan, I'm sure he got the clutch right that round, because, boy, it felt pretty good out there.
Yeah, a 709. You know, enough of this teammate rhetoric. That was war when you two rolled up there.
Let's put it this way. We're a team, but when it comes down to racing, we're individuals, and we both want to win, and we're both fighting for the same thing. We're not 1 and 10 in points. We're 1 and 2 in points, and I've been working hard and long to try and get where I'm at.
On to Pomona next week.
What do you run?
The funny car points chase decided several races ago as John Force clinched it, but the battle is for second, third, and fourth between Cruz Pedregon, Al Hoffman, Chuck Etchells with Casey Spurlock. Number 5, only John Force and Pedregon remain in competition here at Dallas. There's problems with Gary Bolger in the Creasy car. The Cold Fire 302 car stuck in the forward gear. They do not have transmissions. They only have reversers, which allow you to go forward, neutral, or backwards. Right now, they can't get it to go into reverse. They've gotten it into neutral, and with manpower, they are going to push it back. Dale Creasy and crew, the car owner and crew chief, pushing it back along with help from the NHRA Safety Safari and starting line crew. Meantime, Dean Scusa, who's already done all of his burnouts, sitting on the starting line and waiting. Now, this is an act of sportsmanship. He could have been putting a lot of pressure on the Creasy car and the Creasy team as Dale tries to get Gary Bolger exactly where he wants him. He knows he's got to get it to the starting line in a hurry. They check inside the car, try to hold it back just in case the brakes don't work too good. Everything's all right there. Dean Scusa comes up to stage. A bit of drama here in the semifinals at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. And Scusa goes up in smoke. Gary Bolger crosses the finish line with a 5:32 at 280, and what else could go wrong? His parachute doesn't come out, but it is a long racetrack here at the Motorplex as the safety safari truck rolls to make sure that Bolger's okay. He brings it to a stop and takes the last turn off. Maybe, just maybe, sitting there all that time added a bit of heat to the engine for Dean Scusa. Maybe made a little bit too much horsepower, and that could be why he smoked the tires. Here is one of those titanic battles in funny car competition. John Force with the Castrol GTX Chevy Lumina against the McDonald's Oldsmobile driven by Cruz Pedregon, number 1 and 2 in the Winston Chase, respectively. Down at the far end of the racetrack after he finally got the car stopped, Gary Bolger's with Steve Evans.
I cannot believe that we are talking. You had everything go wrong in the starting line, then you couldn't stop.
You're supposed to stop too? See, now, nobody told me that part, Steve.
What was going on?
Well, it seems like somebody put the clutch in wrong, namely the driver. But then that's what took us so long. And then the reverser broke on the line.
You got John Force and Cruz right where you want them now.
Seems pretty easy to me now. How many big cars are left?
Look out, boys. Bolger's in town.
Gary Bolger making his second final round appearance of the 1994 season, the only 2 times he has ever made it to the finals of an NHRA Winston event. Austin Coyle, the crew chief, backing John Force into position. This guy is legendary, and I'm talking about Coyle, not so much Force. Talk about legends, that's Bob Brandt. He was the crew chief in the glory days of Don Prudhomme's funny car career. Down at the far end, Steve has caught up with Dean Scusa.
Dean, for all of us that want to see 2-car races, thanks for the sportsmanship up there with Bolger.
Oh, yeah. Those guys are like great guys. I mean, they're no guppies at all. And we're probably kind of from the same area. And I would have waited there if I'd had to burn the thing down. I would have waited for him.
The winner of this race will face Bolger in the finals here at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. Performance-wise, John Force has definitely got the edge. The only 4-second funny car on the grounds today. And Pendragon wins it. Force crosses the center line and nails the timing devices in the center of the racetrack. 5:08 elapsed time at 297 miles an hour. Let's watch this one in replay. John Force, the Castrol GTX Chevy Lumina in the far lane, gets a good start against Pendragon. He's alongside. Then some problems set in. He drifts over the center line, hits the cone at 1,000 feet, nails the cones at the finish line. Down at the far end, Steve's with John.
John, when you make a withdrawal from the center line bank as you did in the previous round, now you have to make a deposit, I guess.
Pretty exciting, though. Stuff was flying. Hit the throttle. She just put out a hole. Same thing as it did the run before. She was trucking down through there. Next thing I know, Cruz come around me, and I was trying to chase him down, but I think she's just weak. She got over out of the groove and was dragging me toward the center line and puffed him out. That's the ball game.
That's the dark side of this racetrack. You cannot get out of the groove.
So as John Force and his co-crew chiefs, Austin Goyle and Bernie Federle, contemplate their problems, Cruz Pendragon and the McDonald's crew gets their Oldsmobile ready to race Gary Bolger in the funny car final. The Safety Safari crew getting the racetrack ready, replacing the foam blocks that hold the reflectors for the infrared timing devices. Steve?
Cruz, replay that for us.
Well, we're going in there running our own race. You know, we try not to pay attention to John. He's been running so good. I had to really focus and run my own race. The lights are shining hard to see. I felt him, but I didn't see him. I knew he was right there. I was expecting to see some Castrol pull alongside and pull away. But, hey, the McDonald's team headed by Bob Brandt been doing a great job all weekend. We're in the final round again. To beat that guy is something special.
Again is the key word there.
And this is the Skull Bandit. Don the Snake Prudhomme making his final appearance here at the Motorplex as a driver. He is into the Final Four against one of the younger generation of Top Fuel racers, Tommy Johnson Jr. But he's got an old hand at the wrenches. Dave Settles, former Top Fuel pilot in his own right, taking over the wrenching chores earlier this year on Tommy Johnson Jr.'s car. The crew chief for Don Prudhomme, standing back behind the car, is Wes Cerny. He and Roland Leong pitching in to help their longtime pal Don Prudhomme enjoy one of his best seasons ever in drag racing, and certainly the best in the modern era of Top Fuel competition. Tommy Johnson Jr. smokes the tires, and Don Prudhomme runs a 481 and dodges a great big bullet. As we take a look at this race in replay, watch the car in the far lane. Tommy Johnson Jr. He moves well ahead of Don Prudhomme. Got a big advantage, nearly 0.08 of a second. But there you saw the first wisp of tire smoke, meaning he lost traction. Then he smokes him again, and the engine gives him problems, and Prudhomme is streaking his way to the finals as he runs that fine 481.
Snake, I tell you, I feared for you. He's a leaving little dog, that Johnson kid.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm retiring. Yeah, these kids are tough, and you know, he's really good up there. And what can you say? You know, I'm not as young as I used to be, but we're still here, we're still in, and we got another shot at it.
Nice 481 sends him to the finals.
Steve, he may not be as young as he once was, but I'll tell you one thing, he is certainly enjoying this Final Strike Tour. Into the finals here at the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, Don Prudhomme will race the winner of this matchup. Scott Kalitta, the guy that has clinched the Winston Championship. 1 round to go. Now he's going to try to win the race. That is Dick LaHaye, his highly talented crew chief. His opponent is Corey McLenithan. Should Corey win this race, it would advance him into his second consecutive final round appearance. And who would he race? The same guy he raced 3 weeks ago at Heartland Park, Topeka, Don Prudhomme. That's Lee Beard, the crew chief on the McDonald's dragster driven by Corey Mack. Lane choice here falling to McLenithan, as Kalitta just has not had the performance. In fact, he was into the low 490s a round ago. Not the performance that carried him to 19 consecutive round wins, and up in smoke goes Kalitta to the finish line. Corey Mack runs a 493 at 294, not the time he would have wanted. You could bet he was looking for something down in the 470 range. That gives the lane choice to Don Prudhomme over Corey McLenithan in our Top Fuel final here in Dallas. What a race it will be. That's coming up in just a moment. Right now to the far end of the track, here's Steve.
I cannot believe this car ran 493 smoking the tires like that.
Yeah, I had to pedal. I thought it was all over, and then Scott wasn't there. Got back on her. She hooked up pretty good. So, hey, the heck with this. It's one of those things. We're in the final against Snake, 2 races in a row.
3 weeks ago, Corey Mack was the winner. It's time for the finals of the Chief Auto Parts Nationals, and this is Pro Stock. As it has been all season long, it is a Dodge and an Oldsmobile battling it out, unless it was a Dodge against Dodge. But as we saw, the broken part put Darrell Alderman on the sidelines. That's David Hutchins. He and Mike Sullivan, the co-crew chiefs of Wayne County, have got the 2 top cars in the sport today. This is Warren Johnson, resurging, if you will, getting the kind of performance, and that's the guy he beat just a round ago, his son Kurt, waving some of the smoke out of the Oldsmobile Cutlass from GM Performance Parts, trying to get a clear view out the windshield for Warren to cut a good light. Scott Jeffrey is motivated now. If he wins here, he gets even closer to Alderman. But the performance advantage all day long has gone to WJ. Inside the Team Mopar Avenger, this is the view from the office that Scott Jeffrey has out the front windshield. Center of the lane. Oh, by just inches, Scott Jeffrey wins 7:08 at 195 miles an hour. And he won it on a hole shot. Watch the car in the near lane. Gets the advantage at the starting line. That hole shot propelled him to victory because Warren Johnson ran a quicker elapsed time. Each lane of the racetrack timed separately. The clocks don't start until the wheel leaves the starting line. There you see the margin of victory, 11 thousandths of a second.
Scott Jeffrey makes it a little bit tougher for Darrell Alderman next weekend in Pomona. You won it on a hole shot, and that's always special.
Well, it feels good, you know.
Against an old boss.
Yeah, you know, I had let one went away from me here a few years ago. I raced Bob Glidden in a final round and got out on him by, I think, 600ths or something. I broke a sprag, and I had a good feeling about today. I felt this was going to be, you know, it's going to make up for that. And it was just my day today. I was just lucky, and my crew was great as always. And this is for my Uncle Paul.
Congratulations, Uncle Paul.
Scott showing his concern for an ill uncle. Well, it all boils down to the last race of the year, the battle for the Pro Stock Winston title. Darrell Alderman's got the lead, but it isn't near as big as it was over Scott Jeffrey. Let's go back to the far end and Steve.
Scott, meet Lita Jones, Sales and Promotion Manager for Chief Auto Parts. She's got a very handsome medal for you and a hug to boot.
Congratulations, Scott. Can I put this around you? Oh, without choking you? There we go. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Well, this is special. Get it at the other end of the track.
As Scott celebrates his victory, it is time for the finals in Funny Car. And there is a huge disparity performance-wise between these 2 racers. This is the Dale Creasy Coldfire 302 car. Coldfire 302, by the way, the fire extinguishing compound used by a number of the funny car racers and the NHRA safety safari. And that is Dale Creasy. He owns this car. He tunes this car. This is an independent team up against one of the most well-funded race teams in the sport today. The Larry Minor team, the McDonald's Oldsmobile, driven by Cruz Pedregon. Bolger's already in deep stage. Gets an advantage at the start, but can't hold on to it. Gets close to the center line, and Cruz Pedregon wins it. 5:14 at 289 miles an hour. And for the second race in a row and third out of 4 consecutive final round appearances, Pedregon's the winner. Watch in replay, particularly the car in the far lane. Gary Bolger, he faces the same problem that struck Al Hoffman and John Force. He gets across the center line, but dodges the cones.
Cruz, the steering wheel got to work out middle of the racetrack.
Yeah, it sure did. It was like a sprint car out there. It was loose out there. You know, Bolger, we knew that he ran a 13 or a 15, something like that, so we knew to get down the track and run about a 10, and it was loose. We got a little aggressive in the middle there, but it's great to put the McDonald's car in the final round and win again. We want to win at Pomona.
It just solidifies his hold on second place for Cruz Pedregon, following John Force. Hoffman third, followed by Etchells and Spurlock with 1 race to go. Corey McLenithan in the far lane in the McDonald's dragster up against the Skoll Bandit of Prudhomme. They have put on tremendous races 3 weeks ago. Corey Mack beat Prudhomme in identical 4:79 elapsed time. This time the results are reversed and Don Prudhomme wins. His elapsed time 4:77 and 2:90. Corey Mack at a 4:84, 2:98. Watch this one in replay. McClenathan with a big advantage at the start. He's in the far lane. But when you run 4:77, even with the hole shot, you got to be able to run the number, and Corey Mack could not do it. The Snake wins it.
You loved that, every second of it.
Yeah, that was tough, man. Yeah, he's good, you know, but yeah, it was fun, man. I knew it was going to be exciting up there. And
You weren't going to go in first?
Nah, well, but I did go in right after him. I didn't hold him or anything like that. And you know, I got to thank Skoll again and here later. And
why is this so funny?
Well, it's just really nice, you know, quitting and everything and winning a drag race. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Good job.
No,
You deserve it.
You did good too, buddy.
4:77, nice shot.
Thank you very much. Just got to thank Pontiac GM Truck, man. Those cats, without them behind us, we'd be history, and I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Cool.
See what I mean about having fun? Don Prudhomme in second behind Scott Kalitta, who's clinched the Winston crown. Corey Mack has moved into third, followed by Joe Amato and Connie Kalitta. What a day it's been for that man, Don the Snake Prudhomme, winning his third of the season. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from the Chief Auto Parts Nationals at the Texas Motorplex.
Yes, indeed. There you go. That is your NHRA drag racing for this evening. And here we are, getting the party started in the way that you want to. In the green room, a few nibbles, a few soft...